to my Mexican kitchen here in Switzerland. Today's recipe is shortbread biscuits, or if you live in the US, you would call them cookies. I really love these cookies. The buttery taste, it's one of my favorites. And they are super easy to find in the shops, but the weather in Switzerland has been horrible for the past 2 days. The wind looks like it's just gonna knock over trees. So of course, I'm really worried about my life just for getting some cookies. So I thought, let's make them. They're easy to make. No point risking myself out there in the grocery shop just for cookies. And I was kind of Googling, I was curious, what else do I like about Scotland that I don't even know the Scottish made? And it turns out that the television, the refrigerator, the telephone, the color photography, they've made so much stuff. Flushing toilets. I mean, without the Scots, we would be living like cavemen practically. So thank you, Scotland, for all the cool things you've given us. And especially thank you for the shortbread cookies. Now, going back on the subject, let's start making these yummy cookies. The ingredients you need to make your shortbread biscuits or cookies, however you want to call them, are 150 grams of unsalted butter. The equivalent is 2/3 of a cup. 1/4 teaspoon of salt. 50 grams of confectioner sugar. The equivalent is 1/2 cup. 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. 180 grams of flour. The equivalent is 1.5 cups. Okay, so this is a really super easy dough to prepare. You can use your stand mixer, you can use a hand mixer, whatever you have. You can even do it by hand if you want, just more work obviously. But with the paddle attachment, we're going to cream our butter. Like I said, it needs to be room temperature. That'll make it much faster and much easier to cream. You're going to cream it with the salt. If you have a hard time finding unsalted butter, that's okay, you can use salted butter, but take out the salt I'm asking for in the recipe. Don't add extra salt, otherwise it will be too overwhelming. So just keep that in mind. If you have salted butter, use that, but do not add the salt I'm asking for. Once you've creamed your butter and salt, you're going to add your confectioner sugar and your vanilla extract, and you keep whipping and having a nice smooth texture in there. And then after that, we're going to add our flour. You can either add it little by little while it's still mixing, or you can do what I like doing, which is I take the bowl off the mixer and then I just dump it all in there. I mix it in with the spatula just so it gets integrated with the butter and a bit more sticky. And then I continue mixing once I put it back in here with the paddle attachment until all the ingredients have mixed well. Okay, so we are done making the dough. As you guys saw, it is super easy, nothing complicated in making shortbread cookies at home. The next step is you need plastic film, and we're going to dump our dough on the film and we're going to shape it into like a brick form or a rectangular cheese form. What you want is you can either use your hands, you can use the same plastic film, you can use a bench scraper, anything you have that will help you form that nice shape of a brick. After that, you just wrap it in the plastic film and you're going to put it in your freezer for about an hour. You want it to get solid, that all those fats, the butter gets solid, so that when you bake your cookies, they keep their shape. And then after that, we're going to slice the dough with a knife. So you guys better start looking for a nice sharp knife because we're going to make them in an artisanal way. The shortbread cookies, the traditional ones, are like long rectangular forms. So no cookie cutters here. You're just going to use a really good knife. Okay, so before we get started with the next part, you should preheat your oven at 180 degrees Celsius or 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And I already took my dough out of the freezer. It thawed for 1 or 2 minutes. And while I was preheating my oven, the cookie dough looks so much like a Mexican cheese that I know that's called adoera. And I thought, let's try the cheese slicer and see if it works. I was just experimenting while being over there and eating the leftover cookie dough that came out, of course, because it's so yummy. But anyway, the cheese slicer does work. So if you have one of these that have the metal string, they will cut through your cookie dough, so that works. Like I mentioned earlier, a really sharp knife or your bench scraper. You can cut with anything you need to make small rectangles. This is one of the edges. It's not the prettiest cookie, but like I said, that doesn't matter. These are artisanal made. And the characteristic in shortbread cookies is that they have little holes. So you can use either a skewer, a toothpick, cake decorating tool, and you're just gonna make little holes lengthwise on your cookie. You should make about 20 cookies, I think, more or less. That's usually the amount I manage to make. So once you finish making all your cookies, shaping and putting the little holes, you're gonna bake it at the same temperature I told you to preheat. but it's going to be in 2 steps. The total time of baking is 15 minutes, but here's what you're going to do. You're going to put your cookies in the oven and you're going to bake for 10 minutes. Once those 10 minutes are out, you open your oven, you move the tray out, and you're going to flip your cookies over like they're tortillas. And then you pop them back in the oven and you're going to bake an extra 5 minutes. Once the total 15 minutes are done, you take them out of the oven and you put them on a cooling rack so that they cool there. And then later you can enjoy them. Okay, so we are done baking our cookies. They may not be the most beautiful cookies. They're artisan made and the dough can be tricky. When you first touch the dough before freezing it, it's a really smooth, silky dough. It's amazing how it feels between your fingers. But once it's frozen that you cut it, it gets tricky, it's crumbly. When you're putting the cookies on the tray, they look a bit funny, they look ugly, the texture looks weird, but it has so much butter that it just melts and smooths out of it. Let me show you guys one of the cookies. They're cooling down right now. Like I said, they're not the prettiest, but they are the yummiest shortbread you've had because you guys made them and because they are awesome. Just a tip or two. The salt that goes into the recipe, even though I'm using the small grain salt, the normal sea salt that you would use or sprinkle on your food, somehow, at least not the Swiss one, it doesn't manage to melt into the dough while it's baking. So when you eat the cookie, you have pieces of salt, which I honestly don't like. Maybe some people do. So what I do with the salt that goes into my recipe is I put it in a mortar and I really grind it to turn it into super fine powder, and then I add that to the ingredients while they're mixing with the dough. So that's just a tip from what's worked for me from how I like the cookies. Another tip is the cookies will be done in about 10 minutes. I mean, it depends on everyone's oven. You won't need to flip them if you don't want to. I like doing that because the texture in the cookie is nicer, but it's not anything needed. And last but not least, I've had the luck of visiting Scotland, and I find it absolutely beautiful. It's a stunning country. The scenery, the culture, the history, the folklore, everything. It's really, really nice. Not everything I tried food-wise was to my liking. I'm a bit of a picky eater, but I must say that the pastries, the tea, the coffee, all that was amazing. So I'll share a few of the pictures of my experience of Scotland so that you guys can visit through my video, and I hope you enjoy the video, you make these yummy cookies, and I'll see you guys next time.